Welcome back to Pentagram Prime, everyone. In this segment, we are now, this is episode 6, and playing around with Kerbal Space Program. We have already gotten on board the interplanetary vehicle. My apologies, I did go ahead and call it a space station a couple of times, but it is a big rocket. And that's going to take Susa back to her home planet of Kerbin, which is sort of like Earth, and we are in orbit right now around Duna, which is sort of like Mars. So in order for us to get to Kerbin, we have to pick the correct launch window. So Susa is in orbit around Mars, and her home planet is Kerbin. Kerbin is in a little orbit closer to the Sun than where she is on Duna, which revolves at a slower pace. So what we're going to need to do is we need to set it up so that when we fly from Duna to the inner orbit here, Kerbin needs to run up behind us and meet us at an appropriate time. The best way to set this up, so I've heard, is to form a triangle. So what we're going to need is, I'm basing this off of a tutorial on how to do the exact opposite, how to get from Kerbin to Duna. So basically I inverted everything. So we're going to form a triangle with, I think Duna is going to be here, the Sun's going to be here, and Kerbin is going to be somewhere around here. So we're actually going to time warp to that point. In order to do that, we have to go to the tracking station because the time warping will not work otherwise, given that we are so close to Duna at this point. Just basically has to do with the game physics. So we're going to speed things up to about 100,000 times normal speed, and through the miracle of gaming, we're going to just watch the planets move around and ignore the fact that Susa Kerbin is sitting in a small capsule without so much as a fig bar or a bottle of water to keep her company during a year's worth of space flight. If you don't mind, I don't mind. Yep, so here we go. I'm going to try to zoom in a little more. But I got to keep Duna to the right. I'll let Kerbin come around. So I'm not billing this as any sort of intro lesson on Kerbal Space Program, just kind of a commentary on my own experiences with the game. If you want to get proficient at interplanetary transfers, I can definitely recommend Scott Manley, and there's a few other people out there. I didn't see too much on this scenario specifically, so that's one of the reasons I chose to make this game during my brief hiatus from doing math problems. But yeah, we're going to form something that looks like a triangle, and the last couple of times I've run this scenario, it's worked out pretty well for me. I should add that I've been having some big problems with recording video properly, and several of my attempts at recording this stuff ended up, well, the video is unusable. I get to save the audio from my journal, but unfortunately not a whole lot that would be very entertaining for the purposes of YouTube, so I had to go ahead and redo this one. And if it seems like I'm skipping over things, well, I'm also trying to do this in a timely fashion because my screen capture program seems to be crashing somewhere in the vicinity of about 15 minutes into recording. So I'm going to try to make sure that we do this quick, clean, and then I can move on to the next part. Now, in advance of what's going to be coming up after we get to Kerbin's orbit, I'd like to say that I've heard A lot of people say that this is a very difficult. I found the initial part difficult, at least getting used to it. But I've heard people say that the latter part, the re-entry into Kerbin's atmosphere, is problematic. So I won't make any guarantees that I'm going to finish this entire scenario. I am going to try. My original goal was just to get into orbit and dock with that space station, or EVA to it. So made it that far, so I'm happy. All right, so I've been informed that in order to get to closer in to the inner solar system from an outer solar system planet, you need to conduct your I don't want to call it a deorbit burn, but your insertion burn. Probably another word for it. You got to do it on the bright side of the planet if you're going towards the sun. That's kind of the way it works out. So I'm gonna set up a maneuvering node. And I'm going to give us enough speed to just get us into space, get us out of Duna's orbit, which is usually somewhere between 350 and 400 meters per second of delta V. And then what I got to do is go and, well, I got to zoom out first. What I got to do, unfortunately. I zoomed out way, way out. Then I got to find Kerbin. I set that as my target. And then I got to zoom back in. It's like a film I saw when I was in high school called Powers of 10. I got to zoom in and try to tweak the location and speed of this node so that we can get a nice close approach, which unfortunately is going to happen somewhere with my view obscured by the sun. Oh yeah, I gotta add some speed here, otherwise we're not going anywhere. Oop, clicked something I shouldn't have. And that was way too much. As I recall, I only needed about 700 meters per second. I'll give it 8 and trim it down a bit. Okay, so that is our closest approach with Kerbin. And I'm going to dial down the speed and try to do a little bit better. Go to where I remember it being. Yet another thing I have a hard time doing while talking. All right, closing in. See if I can tweak the other aspects of this orbit. Last time I got it to within 80 kilometers. Oh. Oh, I remember having it within 80 kilometers. I could just call this good since it's we're actually using less fuel than the last time I did this maneuver. As I recall, I did have I did save another version of this same maneuver that I'm doing right now. It's a pretty good one, as I recall. And the problem is I lost the video of me setting it up. So it's kind of torn on whether or not to use it because I want the audience to see the setup of the maneuvering node itself. This might be as good as we're going to get this time. I don't know. Bring that back to 7 and change. And I'm also racing against something else, of course. That is the amount of time I've got to shoot video before the program that's capturing absolutely conks out on me. Okay, I am not seeing that closest approach thingy. I don't know what happened. Maneuvering is hard to do. Going in space is easy as long as you don't mind not coming back. Okay, that's what I was looking for. Okay, so these are all capture points with the bodies in and around Duna, around Kerbin, and I think I'm gonna call that good. That gets us all the way to in and around this thing. Now this is where everything you're seeing here is what is going to happen once I'm close to this thing, which is here right now. You'll see what I mean in a minute. So I think we're going to warp to maneuver and fire. All right, warp to next maneuver. Get our bearings. Turn on our stability augmentation system. How you holding up there, Susa? Actually, I'm gonna cancel the time warp so that I can. Oh, wrong one. Stability augmentation. Very good. And that way the ship will be pointed in the direction that we need to fire the engines. Here's a hint, it is not necessarily straight at the planet you're going to. You need to aim for the planet's orbit. And, oh, I wish I had more to show you everybody. But unfortunately, we are on the... Why am I firing on the dark side of the planet? Okay, whatever. Maybe I got bad information. Yeah, like I said, do your own research. This is just me playing around. Yeah, my interest in getting involved with this game is because if I decide I want to simulate something at a later date, this is actually a really good setup to do it. I mean, it's not going to be, you know, the fluid dynamics on things like atmospheric reentry are not going to be perfect. Far from it. There are entire supercomputers that are set up for that sort of thing. But it could give you a good rough idea of what works and what doesn't work. One of my favorite examples of this is a warp to next maneuver. somebody built a giant, and I mean, huge, like multiple skyscraper size rocket that was just goes way, way up into the sky. Because people would always ask, hey, why don't you just build a bigger rocket and it'll fly all the way up there? And someone went ahead and did that in Kerbal Space Program to say, this is why you don't build an insanely large rocket. And of course, the thing just came collapsing down on itself and made a very nice, very entertaining fireball. Oh, and I was on the dark side because I was maneuvering to the light side. All right, head towards the light. But yeah, there's certain that's a great thing about this game is that it gives you a chance to look at certain things that intuitively you think would make sense, like maybe throwing a baseball straight at a planet and it would go back down to the surface, and it'll fly away from you at first, but it's not going to continue doing that forever. Okay, our burn time is 43 seconds. We are at T-minus 30. We need to take the burn time, cut it in half to about 21 seconds, and then fire so that we balance out the imperfect aspects of momentum. I will explain that as soon as the burn starts. And 3, 2, 1, fire. All right. 700 meters delta V. So while we're watching the orbit change, which is kind of an interesting show, actually, here we go. Yeah, I think I was talking about why baseballs don't fall all the way down. Basically, you're modifying their orbit is really all that's happening, and unless you can throw that baseball backwards at about, say, in the case of Earth, 7 times that of a speeding bullet, you're not going to be able to get it to really go anywhere. And okay. All right, so that's the end of that maneuver. And looks like we are... All right, so there's a whole pile of little rocks and thingies around Kerbin that are going to kind of obscure the view here. I'm trying to see if I can just momentarily focus the view. Yes. Alright, I was going to try to zoom in there, but that's not happening. There's probably a way to do it. It's not terribly important. But yeah, we're now going to coast all the way over here, and I got a time warp to do that. But I did want to go ahead and focus view. Okay, there we go. Alright, so we're now focused on the combination of Duna and the vehicle, which is now leaving the Duna system. We can't time warp as much as we want to in close proximity to Duna, so we are going to go back to the tracking station. And then we're going to warp until we get to... Alright, Starbeam. Yep. We'll warp until we get to the place where we're going, Kerbin. And then I'm going to save this file and get ready for us to maneuver into a stable orbit around Kerbin and prepare to re-enter the atmosphere. Alright, so our ship is trying to get from here to here, And you're going to notice us slowly peeling away from Duna. Actually, maybe I'll, let's see. Yeah, same problem I ran into last time. I would love to give you guys a beauty shot of the ship moving away from Duna, but that would slow down our time compression, and then we would spend a lot of time sitting here with me trying to think of something to say. So, never claimed to be good at oratory. I just fly the ship, solve a couple of equations, and hope for the best. Okay, I think that is... Alright, so that's our encounter with Kerbin, periapses. I'm going to save here and call it good. This is Pentagram Prime signing off.